Australian inflation and oligopolies. One of the reasons the RBA may pull the trigger today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights brought to you by Ainslie Bullion and the Gold and Silver Standard. Today, we welcome back Alex, who's been looking at what we can expect really with that interest rate decision today and lots of things surrounding it. So it was a great article today. I'm very keen to dig into it. How are you going today, Alex?
I'm going well. How are you?
Very good. So we're recording this a couple of hours before the interest rate decision. So we're assuming here, making some assumptions here that people watching may already know the outcome. But I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference either way, to be honest, whether we get the rate rise or don't, because the underlying fundamentals here are going to be the same regardless. So can you maybe start us off today talking about that potential rate rise? And are there still more to come? How is all this fitting together based on what you've been looking at?
So chances of a rate rise today, according to the market, currently sitting at 0.04%. So, sorry, that will be the overall increase in interest rates.
Yep.
By December, they're expecting 0.4%, which, considering we've still got that 15-point funny thing that they've never corrected, that's still a possibility. But economists are still saying that they're going to go up. The main reason it may go up today is Philip Lowe may try to make things easier for whoever's to come next, whether that's him or someone else, and just make it easier that if we go harder now, the future person may not have to raise interest rates. So that's probably the main reason he might do it. But we're seeing CPI come off. We're still seeing huge rent increases, electricity increases, all these things that the interest rates are doing nothing to affect right now. And so we've got to start asking ourselves, what is going on, and are these interest rates doing anything? And that's sort of where we started looking today, was something that Garno spoke about in May, just that there's all these rents in the market, be that through housing or through monopoly rents, which we'll talk about, and the RBA is ineffective in handling it.
I find it really interesting because when you've just mentioned there about potentially kicking one more rate rise up just to help the next person along, the data is going to make it quite difficult for them to, sort of continue doing this and sound at all credible when you really have seen quite rapid fall-offs in pockets of inflation around the place, certainly around the world, where some of the US stuff, for example, that inflation, those inflation numbers in Europe, they look like they're falling off a cliff a little bit. So it might be your last shot before you just lose all credibility making some of those statements, surely.
Well, which is probably why if he does it, his credibility is shot thanks to what the government's been saying about him. So what does he care anymore?
Okay, you've already lost it. So just throw
have fun
in the towel
with it now.
and have
Fun
one
pain.
last shot. So just talking a little bit about oligopolies, because that's something, it was really quite interesting and follows on from what you were just saying. You gave lots of really relevant examples for us as Australians here today. And one of them that just to start off with was the supermarkets. And it really boiled my blood a little bit, particularly when you started talking about lamb and some of these things. I went, hang on a second, that's outrageous. Can you just give us a little bit of background about what's going on there?
Oh, so the background is I spoke to a farmer friend of mine the other day and I said, oh, it must be going great. Look at the meat prices. He said, what do you mean? He said, over the last 2 years, lamb's fallen by nearly half. So looking at the data, he's right. They were $800 a lamb last year. It's $500 a lamb now. But, we looked at the CPI figures since May last year. Now, meat is not just lamb, it's got other components, but it's up 4%. So how can something be falling, 40% year on year and the basket still be up 4%? It's just something very suspect. I appreciate that there's feed-in prices, but looking at Woolworths and Coles' profit this year, this is the most profitable year they've ever had. They're going to have problems trying to push it down is all I can say, because their numbers are huge. And they're sitting there saying they're absorbing costs for us, which is wonderful. I'm very happy they're doing that. They're also absorbing, from what I can see, the benefits. So it's certainly holding inflation up, these numbers. If things should be feeding down and they're not feeding it through, it's what Garno was saying in the talk the other day was they are gouging, they are taking advantage, and it's a monopoly that there's no other place to go. These farmers have one place to sell it to, or two places to sell it to. They're not seeing the benefit. So why aren't we as consumers seeing the benefit?
And they're shielded, aren't they, effectively? Because when you've got the government and the central bank, more importantly, coming out and saying inflation's high, you've got a lot of people telling the consumer to expect higher prices. So they're going, okay, well, we'll run with that. Like there's no real consequence from them, even from consumers, because they probably are just accepting it.
I totally agree. Just like my faux pas thinking meat prices are up and farmers are doing well. They're not. I've been put in my place. I've been told something different. So, if you speak to people and if you speak to the coalface, so to speak, it's a very different story. And you're right. That's the reason I looked at electricity and fuel as another point of view. Fuel is one of those things that is always in your face. Yep. So as I go to work, I pass by the petrol station and I see the Bowser rate. Now, if you look at the Bowser inflation, that's up 28.8%. That's fuel prices right now. But year on year in May, we're down 9%. So why aren't I seeing that in the Bowser? But 28% is not the same as electricity. And that was my comparison. So there's a bit of uproar that fuel's not coming down. But electricity, thermal coal prices, gas prices are pre-Ukraine levels. I keep saying this. And our electricity inflation is at 15%. It's another monopoly, oligopoly, I'm going to say it wrong.
Oligopoly.
In Australia right now, that because it's not something that you see every day, like the fuel Bowser, they seem to be just trying to get away with more and more. A year ago...
It's a step further than that, because we've got these rebates on electricity and things coming through as well. So that's more of the same as far as I can see. That's more, we'll don't look here because we're giving you a little supplement to make that smoother while you absorb it in that initial thing. But if the price doesn't come down, like it's exactly what you just said. I
feel like the rebate's just Queensland. I'm not sure it's happening in other places, but maybe I'm wrong.
But that's it. Like that's caught all of our attention. It's like, oh well, okay, well you just get
look
used
over
to it.
Here.
Yeah, it seems like a distraction.
So you're absolutely right. You've got people saying inflation's in electricity, but is anyone actually looking at the markets? A year ago, when Ukraine war happened, so March last year, the gas companies said, we're in a global market, cop the prices. But for some reason, now that the prices are coming down, we're not in a global market anymore and Australia is paying more. So, this is just insanity, what is going on with monopolies and what Gunno refers to as economic rent. They are increasing. Our real wages are decreasing. Our productivity is not rising. But company profits are up 150%. Real wages, I think I'm not going to get this right, but are up around 60% since the GFC. So there's this huge amount of money going to company profits that's feeding into our inflation, and no one is doing anything about this. So it's another political framework, political policy that needs to be put in place that no one's looking at, and we just keep shooting RBA monetary blanks at nothing. So
yeah, and that is probably to tie all of that up. It's consistent with what we've been discussing over a number of weeks now, this idea that government policy allows these things to happen. So I think some of the pushback here will be from people saying, well, at the end of the day, supermarkets are private entities. They're private companies that are, they're public companies, but they operate independently. That's how capitalism works, all of that, right? Which is a fair enough comment. But at the same time, government policy allows those things to happen. It allows us to get to the point where we have these
limited competition,
massive players in the market. And often that's due to heavy regulation about what it takes to get there. So it effectively creates a moat around them. They can't, another competitor can't really step in at that scale, at least. And we've seen that certainly with supermarkets. So is this another example then in your mind that policy's counterproductive in this case and hurting the wrong people, and it really it really does actually fall back on government to solve this?
Yep, it's another government thing, just like this immigration issue. If, these things just continue to go unchecked, which they appear to be, then we're just going to continue seeing unabated inflation that, the RBA, whether they lift rates today, I think they might lift it by 0.15% just to catch up, because I think
and you do like them getting to that round number, don't you?
I would really like them to. It's very frustrating as someone who likes numbers that they're not getting there. But anyway, one day. So if they keep doing this, all they are hitting is the 1/3 of people with mortgages and the 1/3 of people with rents. And Garno, again, what I've been talking about, that those interest rate rises are feeding into inflation in mortgage payments and rents.
Yep.
And it's not affecting 100% of Australia. It should be affecting 100% of Australia to tie this down, but it's not. And then you've got monopolies. It's a little bit chaotic at the moment, and they really need to deal with this. And it's not Liberal or Labor. It's just government policy now and previous governments. It's both. There's not, it just needs to be dealt with.
And it's a very important point to reiterate. You said 1/3 of people there are holding a mortgage, 1/3 of people there are renting. They're the 2/3 who are most impacted. Well, that other 1/3 are the people who own their own home. Generally, they're going to be, by definition, the wealthier people anyway.
That hold the supermarket stocks and the electricity
stocks.
So
they're actually benefiting often from those higher rates, because even though, yes, they still take a hit at the grocery store like everyone does, that does impact everyone. That impact on their total is much less significant than those other 2/3 of the population.
Yeah, so if those monopoly profits continue to go up like they are, you're benefiting the top 1/3, impacting the bottom 2/3, and, your wealth gap continues to grow, which is not a good thing for any economy.
Well, no, and we see what happens if that gets too far out of whack. If you look at, I know it's caused by other issues, but there's a lot of that feeding what's going on in France at the moment, and lots of places around the world. That's what sparks the rage and frustration that causes these public outbursts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not fair, and this needs to be more balanced. And you can't keep raising rates when they're ineffective, and that it's just making some people destitute, and a lot of people holidaying in Europe this time of year, from what I can see from my daughter's Snap map.
Yeah. It's certainly a good time to be overseas in Europe. So it's just, you got to pick your location. You got to pick your location though. Yeah.
Snow, might as well be in Europe.
Yeah, might as well be in Europe. Okay. Well, Alex, thank you for that. Feisty as always, and certainly, like I said, boiled my blood on a few of those topics. So thank you. I always appreciate that. It's something to really sink our teeth into. So thanks.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Remember, reach out with any questions or comments on the social platforms so we can get back to you on those. That's us for today. We'll be back later in the week, probably on Thursday, I think, with Sam to discuss all things markets and metals. So until then, have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you later.